Welcome to CB Ministries Church Security Through Prevention podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Blevins. This podcast is a continuation in the series about mistakes made, lessons learned, and anything else that might be helpful for you. I would encourage other security leaders to think about situations that you have learned from. And if it's something that you feel you would like to share so that everybody else can hear about it and learn from it as well, contact me and let's get something set up so we can get a recording done. I hope that this series will have an impact on many, and as we're able to put more and more of those stories out there, that'll just continue to be that way. As usual, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. We are looking forward to a new year of seminars, and we would love to get information out to you if you would like more information on what it looks like to host a seminar. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this week's series with another church leader. James, welcome to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast.
Thanks for having me again today, Dan. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's almost a reoccurring regular basis, either me on yours or yours on mine, you on mine. So it's been great to talk with you lately on a lot of different things. And we're continuing the series this week on church security, just with guys, leaders that have been around a while, and some of them that haven't. But what are the mistakes that have maybe been made, and what are lessons that have learned, or processes that you've seen? Well, that didn't work well. Let's try this. And so you responded that, hey, I want to, I can participate with that, and you had some things to share, and I want to just give you the opportunity to do that today.
Sure. Well, and I always appreciate the opportunity. I think that for any individual that's been doing church safety for a length of time, you're always learning. You're always trying to reevaluate, or you should be always learning. You should always be trying to reevaluate your policies and processes and training, and just make sure that you're as things come up, because it's such a variable environment. Church safety is that, a lot of times we learn as we move through things, and sometimes we'll learn that policies and procedures that we had established a certain way just don't work the way that we thought they would after we've had an event to kind of open our eyes. And so usually one of the things that I do to kind of keep that in check for myself is I about once a year, I have four men that actually are assistant directors, safety directors at my church. And once a year, I will actually sit down with them and take them out to breakfast, and we'll have a time of fellowship. And then once we're kind of done eating, I'll pull out our policy book and we'll go through, page by page, and just look at, okay, what have we done in the last year that maybe we had to stretch our policy on, or maybe it wasn't worded correctly or quite as well as it could have been, or maybe we needed to change it up a bit. And so to me, that's proven to be a great, not only a great time to fellowship and bond, but also to seek other individuals' attention and thoughts, and just say, okay, you know what are your thoughts on this? Is it going well? Do we need to make adjustments, and kind of critique it? And what's cool about it is it's very engaging to everyone. It's not just me at that point. It's not just me making the decisions or me going to the church leadership. It's me seeking counsel and making sure that we're doing things the way that we should be. And those individuals I respect, and I value their opinion. And so, it really just kind of takes the brotherhood of a safety team and safety team leadership to the next level. And we've kind of developed a relationship where I trust those individuals because of that because of that brotherhood, that if maybe I'm handling something incorrectly or I do something wrong, I expect them to come to me and pull me aside and coach me, just like I would with them. So, in a sense, yes, as the director of that ministry, I answer to the pastors, and um, I have to answer for my choices and how I run things and policies, et cetera, et cetera. But I also, in a sense, have the accountability piece of four godly men who are experienced in different areas to hold me accountable and make sure that I'm handling myself professionally in a God honoring way. So it usually it's worked out very well, and I've been blessed to develop relationships with individuals that go far beyond the boundaries of church ministry. So
Yeah, and that's I mean that's just key in our walk as men anyway. We
sure,
often want to isolate ourselves, and when we isolate, it usually gets us in trouble.
yep,
And we need other men around us. It's that iron sharpening iron. So not even just from that spiritual standpoint, but you bring up a great point that if you have four men, and I've seen it work and not work, to where you get individuals that might get really offended if their ideas aren't taken.
sure,
Instead of it being looked at as a, let's work together, but we're not always going to all agree on this. I mean, this
right,
happens on the faith-based security network, even within board members. We all
sure,
have different views and opinions or life experiences on things,
hmm,
and but for you to be able to have the four guys that come alongside, and that it's more than just serving shoulder to shoulder, that you guys are doing life together as well is huge. And that's what I really try and strive, try to communicate is, that's what's important with these teams. It's a ministry, but
right,
yet, we can't do it alone. I can't do it. I know you don't know it all, and I don't know it all.
sure,
We have to rely on others to be every all throughout the Bible. People had their David or whoever had their people around them to give them advice and wisdom. So that's a great point.
oh yeah. And I think honestly too, it hasn't, for me, it hasn't always been that way. You had mentioned that this podcast was about mistakes and things learned. When we first started our team at our church, there was no structure for assistant directors. There was no structure for leadership to hold me accountable. And interestingly, I grabbed a handful of people, and we had no structure on leadership. We had no scheduled structure. And when it first started, my initial thought was, you know what, I'll just schedule people. People are always at the church. It's not necessary. It's just that's an added headache, and there's always going to be people here to help. And what came to light for me in a interesting situation was that you can't do that. You have to have policies and procedures. You have to have guidelines. You have to have scheduling. You have to plan to be successful. And one Sunday evening, I wasn't at church, and we had a Sunday evening service, and there was a gentleman that caused a disruption in our sanctuary, and individuals jumped up who were on the safety team and tried to escort this individual out of our sanctuary. And I'm not sure if he was a special needs case or autistic. I don't remember all of the details, but I remember that he tried to physically assault one of the ladies that was trying to help him and help him calm down. And so one of our deacons that was in the situation, he's a good friend of mine, and he is on our safety team, um, yelled at someone walking by that also happened to be on our safety team, "Hey, go call 911. We need to get the police here because the situation isn't going great." And that individual that he yelled to looked at him and said, "I'm not on the schedule tonight. I'm not scheduled. I don't need to. I don't need to call 911." And turned around and walked away.
I'm
And
assuming they're not serving anymore.
they are not.
Yeah, yeah.
They are not. But after that, and so somebody else, the deacon was like, "What are you talking? What? Just pick up the phone and call 911. We need an officer here to handle this." And so eventually someone did, and an officer came and took care of it. And the next time I went to church, I kind of, I pulled everybody in and I said, "Okay, so let's debrief. Let's talk about this. What exactly happened?" And so interestingly, and obviously that pushed us towards having a set schedule. And for me, it really made me evaluate, okay, who do I have in key leadership roles that can oversee things when I'm not here, and who do I have on the team, period. And it caused me to kind of sift through several individuals that event did on my team that, at first I was like, "Oh yeah, they'll be perfect. It's a great ministry. They want to help. It's right for them." And then after that, I stepped back and I said, "You know what? We need a process for this. We need a process to sit down and vet people. We need to have several conversations with them." So I walked away feeling I think very humiliated in a sense, because here we were a new team and things didn't go right. But at the same time, was able to take the situation and say, "Okay, wait a second. Yeah, it was horrible. We did a bad job. But how can we turn this around, and what do I need to do differently in the future to handle this type of situation, and make sure all services are covered and their structure?" Because one of the things that I always like to say is that God is not a God of chaos. He is a God of order. And, we see that time and time again throughout the Bible, through creation, through everything. Everything is very well ordered and very intricately detailed. And so when I sat down, I thought, you know what, not only is it the reputation of me, it's the reputation of the safety team, the church, for handling incidents. And, we need to fix this. Well, the sad thing was, individuals that did leave the team turned around, and for a long time, I was then dealing with asking them to step down because that wasn't the right ministry. But I was also dealing with them gossiping and backbiting about my leadership roles, because in the church, they didn't just leave gracefully. They turned around and tried to start drama, with the pastors, with the oversight pastor, and basically just be like, "Hey, this guy," referring to me, "this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and he shouldn't be over this, and how dare you ask me to step down." And so it took quite a bit of time to work through that. I'm thankful that we had the opportunity to work through that, because I think that it taught me a lot. And I feel today, the individuals that caused strife at that point, I still talk to them. They're still my friends. We've worked through that. But again, at the same time, it's, people mention, when I talk to churches often about church safety and whatnot, a lot of times people will say, "Well, why do you think you know it all? And why do you think that your way is the best way?" And, my response to that is, I honestly don't think that I know it all. And I love going to other churches and seeing other teams, and just seeing where, maybe we can improve stuff. Maybe we can change things, because every church is different. Every church runs their team a little bit differently. And, every team has a tiny bit different of a focus, because it's a different entity. So I've never once thought, even to this point, after almost 15 years of doing it, I've never once thought, oh, hey, I've arrived and everything's perfect, and come see the team at my church because it's an awesome team. Well, it is an awesome team because everyone works hard, but we're far from perfect, and we understand that, and we're okay with that. So
We just want to take a quick break here to let you know how to contact us and where to find out more about our national seminar. I see communities that may know why church security is important, but they may not be doing anything about it or don't know how to do it well. Our national seminars are for ushers, greeters, children's workers, staff, volunteers, your security teams, and other ministries in your community. We say that this is a level 1 training that is designed to help equip you to serve well in your various ministries while maintaining a safe place for people to come. Getting churches on the same or similar page when it comes to security will only make the community safer as well. The easiest way to find out more information or to contact us is to go to cv-ministries.com. There you'll find a variety of training DVDs and books, with more being developed all the time. There's also a place at the bottom of the page where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter and to be able to get more information. We would love your feedback on topics or guests that you would like to hear on future podcasts. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, and I think what you experienced isn't, that different than a lot of churches struggle with, especially churches that may have quickly put a team together without
sure.
a lot of the forethought that you described in that, and then they realize, oh wait, we really need to do this differently, and hopefully podcasts like this will help them to kind of maybe even step back and say, okay, you know what, we're going to relook at how we're doing this. And it's really, I think it really is creating a particular culture within the security team. I know for us, we've been doing it about 13 years at our church. We have roughly 70 individuals that serve, and we all know that even if we're not on the schedule for that weekend, that I always go to whoever the leader is that's leading that squad for the weekend and say, hey, okay,
Sure.
you know what, I'm sitting here. If you need
Right.
anything, and if it's my squad that's leading that weekend, I've got guys and gals coming up to me saying, hey, you know what, we're in on this service. We're sitting back here. I know that if we only have 4 people on the schedule, I've got at least another 4 scattered throughout the auditorium.
Sure.
And they all have that mentality that no, regardless whether it's our time or not, we're here to serve. We're here to protect the people, and I think we've been really blessed that we've only had to ask one person in all these years to step down because of an attitude, because
Sure.
it wasn't the right heart of service that they had. We've had other people voluntarily step down because they didn't like the direction that maybe it was going. I often
Mm-hmm.
tell them, you know what, if you're frustrated with the leader, you got to take a look at why you're serving. Are you serving for
Right.
the leader, or are you serving for God and for the people that are coming to our church? Because there's multiple times over the years I would have said, "Oh, forget this. This is nuts."
Sure.
But that's not what the heart of service is, and it's great to see that the culture that you've developed at your church.
Well, thanks. It's we operate, and it's kind of interesting. We operate very similar to your what you just described at your church, and often if we don't have someone on the schedule, if I'm not on the schedule, like you said, I'll mention to them, to whoever's leading, okay, this is where I'm sitting, and if you need something, and I'll always have an earpiece and radio on, and the interesting thing is I do my best not to jump in, because I know that if they're handling something and they're handling it, then also as a leader, I need to be trusting that they're doing what they've been trained and doing it well.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting. One of the verses that just kind of popped into my mind was Proverbs 11:14, where it says, "Where there's no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors there is safety." And honestly, now with our process for bringing new people in, obviously we all have certain catchphrases and red flags that we kind of process through, interviewing someone. But one of the simplest things that I do now is I will sit down and talk to the person, and then I will ask one of the other assistant directors to go talk to them, and then, independently. And then after they're done, I will, I'll meet up with that other director, and I'll say, okay, so what did you think? Would you want to serve next to that person? What was your takeaway? And what's interesting is, more often than not, it double checks my thoughts, but then sometimes, they might notice something, something that I didn't notice. And one of the things over the years, one of the things that we've added to the discussion is how does this ministry impact your family? And often, there are often times when we'll get called. Oftentimes that I get called in the middle of the night to do stuff or to run over to the church. Or in fact, we had a situation last weekend where a staff member called me because someone had broken into the church, and it was 1 a.m. And so one of the things that often we'll do is we'll also talk with the spouse, and we'll say, how do you feel about this individual serving? And in this role in this ministry, where there's a lot of time that has to be required. And, we'll take that into account too, because we don't want to create a situation where that individual has a rough time with their family, with their marriage, because they're serving in ministry. So.
Yeah, we haven't taken it as far as, meeting with the spouse, but it is, the question still is asked. Do you
Sure.
understand how much time, does your wife understand how much time? Because it is important that they do understand the time commitment. There's no other, okay, I can't say that,
I know what you were going to say, though.
yeah, but it's hard to find a ministry that, such as, this type of, ministry that, that takes as much time away from family as this does. If you're serving as an usher, it doesn't, or a greeter, or a parking lot, or something like that. I mean, as I think about it, you have your tech teams maybe, or your worship teams. They put a fair amount of hours into preparing for the service. The pastor, obviously, at least we hope so. But
Sure.
yeah. Can't assume that either. No, I'm kidding. So it is a huge time commitment when you're talking about, and for us, it's 2 times a month that we're training. We're training as a whole group for one of it, and then the armed component goes and does tactical training at the end of the month, and so that alone is a lot of time, away from family, besides just the serving twice a month.
And sometimes it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, because I think the individuals that usually find themselves in that ministry enjoy it and enjoy the fellowship. And, it's quite possible that, as far as, like, if I was in that situation, if I was doing tactical training or something like that, to me, I enjoy that. So I don't look at that as an additional burden of time, for that ministry. But at the same time, not every individual always understands that it still takes your time, and it still places you in a position where you're tied up with the ministry. But I mean, I agree with you 100%. I can't think of too many other ministries. There are a lot of ministries in the church that take time, but a heightened sense of awareness and showing up before everyone gets there and staying there until everyone leaves is kind of a different animal with serving.
Right. Yeah, and time really is what I was thinking. Yeah, for us guys, typically the ones serving, guys and gals serving on the team, the training time aspect isn't that big of a deal, because this is what we look forward to, the camaraderie, the getting out. But do our families really realize the time that it's going to take. We've had a few people step down because their wives are like, you know what, I just need you home more often, or I need help with the kids
Sure.
and we'll try and work with them schedule wise or otherwise to keep them on board. We hate to lose any of our good guys, but we totally get it. They got to take care of their family and their marriages first.
Sure.
So anything else you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much wraps it up. I think that probably if anything, I would say that the biggest thing, and I know I mentioned this to you before, but I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the years is to be flexible and to realize that every situation is different and every situation requires wisdom and prayer. And every for me to for me to make a statement that, oh, I like I said before, I know everything, or I've got everything down and we're solid, is just, I think it kind of borders, or for anyone to say that, I think it kind of borders on being prideful. And
Absolutely.
and I don't mean that for anyone that listens or is listening, I don't mean that in a condescending way, but there's a way to look at it and say, yes, we're effective, we're a graceful ministry, we're an effective ministry. But again, with us and the church safety guys, one of the things we say is semper disciplina, which is Latin for always training. And we're always looking for better ways to do things, or more effective and efficient ways to do that. And I think the day that an individual stops doing that, really might be the day to decide if that's no longer the ministry, the appropriate ministry for you to be in. And sometimes that can be frustrating because, there's always something new to learn. There's always something new to train in. But,
Right.
At the same time, if you've lost that passion, and just speaking from someone that's been in the ministry for doing this as long as I have, I still get a great amount of joy and fulfillment out of serving the Lord by doing it. But if there ever came a day where in my mind, I got to the point of saying, you know what, this is nothing's ever going to work. Nothing's ever going to be different. It's perfect. We're good to go. Then that would be the day that I would really need to evaluate if I should continue doing it or not.
Right. So I'll tell you a funny, kind of a funny story here, but to go with your Latin. But I was at an event, and this guy came up to me and handed me this little Gumby figurine. And he said, Semper Gumby,
Yep.
always be flexible. And so, which is huge in life in general,
Sure.
but definitely in what we do. As I talk about that in the in the verbal de-escalation section of our seminar. That we've got to be flexible with these people, and I carry that Gumby in my computer bag to this day, just to kind of as a reminder of, got to be flexible.
Well, we can, and that's certainly the key. We can spend all year, all day, developing policies and procedures and training people and going around and around until we're blue in the face. But the reality is, every situation is so different that, yes, it's good as a guideline and it's good as having the, a foundation of law, but where the law abounds, grace abounds more, right? So
Right.
with every situation that we deal with, if we're not gracious, if we're not understanding that the policies and procedures are there for a guideline and an outline to help us make, good judgment calls, sometimes it can get a little frustrating. to say the least. But
yeah. And I do, going back to the beginning, I do, I think it's great what you do with your co-leaders with taking your policies and procedures and doing a review of them. Just to say, are they still applicable? What needs to change? What doesn't? I don't think that happens often enough, but they're living, breathing documents.
sure.
It's that's where that flexibility is okay, we learned from this. This action doesn't work this way, or something changes, maybe in the law for that state or whatever the case is. Is everything still applicable?
Yep.
Well, James, thank you so much for taking time today to share a couple stories and some of what you've learned and some of your wisdom with people, because I think it's, like we've talked about, it's important. I would much rather learn from other people's mistakes than to make them myself and have to learn from them. Right? Yeah. So it's, I think this will be a huge help. This idea originated from the anniversary podcast where my brother-in-law, it was a suggestion he had, was that, he would love to hear more of this information. It was like, okay, let's do it. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do it with me today.
Yeah, no problem. I honestly, I believe that people are hungry for it, and that's one of the reasons, one of the things that I think has grown our ministry is that, like, when we do the broadcasts and stuff, we're just honest, we're transparent, and a lot of times it's one thing to stand in front of somebody and lecture and tell, and say, hey, this is how you're supposed to do it. But I think people honestly want scenarios, and they want to see how you got to, the conclusion that you got to,
Right.
and how does this work in the real world, and how with application, you as an individual seem to know everything, but tell me about a time when you messed up and got to that point of knowing how to handle this. So
we even get that feedback after the seminar, to where I use different videos to example different aspects, and people say, well, it'd be great to see something that was specific to a church, and unfortunately that's just not out there. We have but you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hungry for that. They're hungry for the honest stories of, what, we blew it here, and this is what we learned from it.
Sure.
All right. Well,
cool. Well, if
thank
you
you
need
so
anything
much.
else, feel free to holler. I'm always around.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it and you found it of benefit to you, we really appreciate your feedback. There's several different ways that you can provide us feedback. One of them is to subscribe to the podcast, is to share it with others, and another is to contact us directly, particularly if you have any questions or concerns, or you want more information on how to host a seminar in your community. You can contact me directly at danielblevins@cv@heart.com, or you can go to our website. That's cv-ministries.com. Both of those will get you in the right direction. Until next time, make sure that you're out there protecting the flock with a heart of service.